North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, which is not the news. It's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is a journalistic exercise, and I hope you take part in it. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can call anytime you'd like. Discuss what we're discussing. This is not an open line show. We discuss the news of the day. And so what we report is what we talk about. So please, by all means, join us. You can also join us on the chat room. The chat room is available at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And it's good to see Gary Olivier, who just won the chat room derby. The first person through always wins the chat room derby. And Gary, thanks very much, my brother in the Texas State Guard. So this is a very big day for both America, American politics, and American journalism. This is encapsulated in opening arguments that are very shortly due to begin in the Dominion Voting Systems defamation lawsuit against Fox News. There are serious difficulties with this from a legal standpoint, most of them constitutional. But then again, constitutional issues with regards to how the laws in this land are enforced, etc., both civil and criminal, seem to be up for grabs. And so is this another example of that? That's one of the things that involves this nation and indeed is going to have lasting impact. Journalism-wise, we talked about this yesterday on the Wells Report. One of the problems with American journalism is that it's more agenda-driven than fact-driven, something we try to remedy here on the Wells Report. And because it's more agenda-driven, it leads inevitably to politics. And when it leads to politics, news ceases being information and starts being propaganda. On this broadcast, we work really hard to translate propaganda back into news so that you can have the facts necessary to be able to deal with decisions coming soon that, again, will affect this country. So the opening arguments, as reported by CNBC, which, by the way, in my humble opinion, is the only functioning journalistic effort in NBC News. Opening arguments set to begin today in the Dominion's voting systems defamation lawsuit accusing Fox News of spreading false information that Dominion voting systems rigged the 2020 election. The civil trial is taking place in Delaware Superior Court. It arrives more than 2 years after Dominion, which sells voting machines and election software, first accused Fox of knowingly airing lies about the company in order to boost its ratings. The network intentionally and falsely blamed Dominion for former President Donald Trump's loss to President Joe Biden by broadcasting unsubstantiated claims about the company, including that it meddled with vote tallies, this according to allegations by Dominion. Fox maintains the statements made about Dominion on air are protected by the First Amendment, which shields freedoms of speech and press. The network also argued that Dominion's suit does not establish the claims were aired with actual malice. That's a requirement to meet the legal standard for defamation. The trial's unusual circumstances. Most defamation cases are settled out of court. Few promise in-person testimony from a parade of well-known media figures, along with 10-figure claims for damages that have generated a serious media buzz. But it's far from clear what impact, if any, the case will have on Fox's reputation or its bottom line. Dominion has also filed defamation lawsuits against Trump's former attorney Rudy Giuliani, ex-campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, right-wing news networks, and other figures. Smartmatic, another elections technology firm, has filed similar defamation lawsuits demanding billions of dollars in damages. The case against Fox has seized the spotlight in recent months, especially following the release of troves of private messages and testimony from top Fox News talent and executives, including Fox Corporation Chairman Rupert Murdoch, also opinion host Tucker Carlson. The communications have cast a shade of scandal over the legal battle, revealing how some Fox personnel and other high-profile figures reacted behind the scenes to the events following the 2020 election. News outlets were quick to contrast some Fox personalities' private remarks about the election fraud claims with what was being said on the air at the same time. Now, having lived around and in newsrooms, especially for the last 25 years, I can tell you that there are a lot of things discussed that never make the air and frankly never should. Very much like the discussions made by presidents, senators, members of the House of Representatives, city councils, mayors, in the case of Texas, county judges, which are our county administrators, and on and on. The public product of Fox News is different in lots of ways than those private discussions being had in a newsroom, most of which are theoretical in nature, philosophical indeed, and the subject of what are the best debates in American discourse. Having taken part in them, I can say that's absolutely true. What we have here is we have a company that has some very interesting things that may dissuade anyone from believing that Fox News was out to defame them. That being said, this particular case has taken what used to be called judge shopping to, shall we say, area shopping. For example, a local district attorney in a city in New York is and has filed felony charges against a former sitting president. In this case is being held in Delaware Superior Court. Delaware Superior Court is the home of, as you know, President Joe Biden. Not only is he the home of President Joe Biden, but the home of Senator Joe Biden before that. These people are clearly, from a standpoint of how they vote, left of center. Does Fox News, clearly right of center, does Fox News stand a chance for a fair verdict in Delaware? That's one of our questions. The other questions have to do with the actual company itself, Dominion. Dominion Voting Systems the company has made statements about their voting machines that have been questioned seriously by serious, shall we say, non-partisan actors. There have been a lot of companies that looked at Dominion Voting Systems and said, this company purports that their voting systems cannot be reached from the internet. That's not true. Now, that's what they say. What I look at when I see this is I say, well, it's certainly the cause for a question. There's also another problem that Dominion has. Dominion has made it abundantly clear that the way their machines work, their voting machines, the way they actually function, is a trade secret. Okay, so let me see if I got this straight. We're going to vote on machines and none of us know how they work, and the company that puts them out refuses to tell you how they work. Is that really where we are here? That's why when all this came down, I said to myself, there's no way that Dominion is going to want to go into an actual open courtroom and start testifying about their machines. Because at some point, and this is obvious, just basic law, the discovery process requires them to open their trade secrets, for example, to scrutiny by the court. I never expected this to get this far. I'm pretty sure that Dominion didn't expect it to get this far either. I'm pretty sure that Dominion expected that Fox News would say, let's just make this go away. There would be an exchange of money, non disclosure agreements would be signed, and so on. And we would hear that there was a settlement made, and both parties would say it satisfied our needs in the case, and everything would move on. But I guarantee you that if this trial unfolds as I believe it should, which is a thorough and careful examination of just exactly how these machines work on the public record, that there are going to be very serious, very pointed, very harsh conversations about exactly how we cast our votes in this nation. The European Union got away from electronic voting machines. They vote with pencil and paper. I believe that that is something that we probably should consider in the future, if not immediately. And the reason I say that is because, once again, you cannot have voting machines that operate in secret. That is a plain flaw in logic. It's a plain flaw in logic that is irrefutable. People say, well, Dominion can vary the vote count. There is weighting in the software. There are algorithms. There are this and that and so on and so on. I've noted that Dominion doesn't deny any of that. They just say that the reporting has been wrong. And once again, I find that very curious. You see, there are big issues with elections in the United States. Most recently, the Chicago mayoral election. The Chicago mayoral election elected an even more left-wing progressive than Lori Lightfoot, who all but ruined the city. Indeed, the teen takeover of last weekend in Chicago was explained away by, well, we can't vilify the kids. Excuse me? They're beating up people. They're jumping on cars. They're breaking windows and they're stealing things and this and that and such and so. Why can't we vilify them? As a matter of fact, a state senator in Illinois said, it's just protest. No, it's not. It's hooliganism. It's law breaking. So how did these people get elected to office in the first place? There are big problems with this lawsuit. What are yours? What are your ideas about it? Do you believe that Dominion voting systems are honest, straightforward? Do you believe that Fox News reported, shall we say, defamatory information about Dominion voting systems? What are your thoughts? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can join us on the chat room. Very much interested in hearing what you have to say as Dominion and Fox go at it in civil court. Back with more of the Wells Report in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. It is the 18th day of April, year of our Lord 2023. I am John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. A defamation lawsuit against Fox News is being heard in Delaware Superior Court. Judge Eric Davis is presiding. Last month, Judge Davis ruled that statements flagged by Dominion were indeed false. The evidence developed in this civil proceeding demonstrate that it is, in all caps, crystal clear that none of the statements relating to Dominion about the 2020 election are true. I sure would like to know what the judge is basing that on. I certainly hope that we see the evidence that he's referring to. His ruling clarified the trial jury will determine who is responsible for publishing the false claims and if those people acted with actual malice. The legal standard means proving the claims were published with the knowledge that they were false or with reckless disregard for the truth. The lead up to the trial has already been marked with major twists. The judge ruled earlier this month that 92-year-old Murdoch and his son, Fox Corporation CEO Lachlan Murdoch, can be forced to testify in court. Other witnesses include Tucker Carlson, Fox News CEO Suzanne Scott, Sean Hannity, and other top TV personalities on Fox. At a pretrial hearing last week, Davis sanctioned Fox and its parent company for withholding evidence from Dominion during the discovery process. Interesting that, once again, we haven't heard about the discovery process going the other direction. Ann on the chat room says, "Excuse me, but in court, doesn't Dominion have to prove that their machines operate as advertised?" The answer is, of course, yes. But so far, this judge has been very much pro-Dominion and very much not pro-Fox. That is just an observation. Recordings were made by former Fox producer Abby Grossberg in 2020, which allegedly showed Giuliani and Fox host Maria Bartiromo talking about voting software. They were not handed over to Dominion, according to NBC. Grossberg sued the network last month, alleging she was coerced into giving misleading testimony in the Dominion case. A Fox spokeswoman said after the trial it had produced supplemental information from Ms. Grossberg when we first learned about it. Obviously, this is developing news. The thing that we have here, and these are things that I simply can't get away from. 81 million people voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. 74 million people voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 election. That's 155 million people. According to the 2010 census, there were only 165 million registered voters. The 2020 census had not been used for reapportionment of districts, et cetera, during the 2020 election at that time. And so what ends up happening is we're looking at a 94% voter turnout. That never happened. If there are only 165 million registered voters, either there are people who are not registered voters voting, or there are huge problems with the voting machines. At some point, we will get to the bottom of all of this. I'm also disturbed that Judge Davis found that these statements were false. And he's saying that a civil court trial, the jury will determine whether or not this was made with actual malice. It seems to me that a fair rendition of the facts in this trial, I think that door has been already closed. What about you? Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So, did Fox News lie? And why is it that we know other news organizations have lied about all kinds of things, but Fox News is the one suffering the lash? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We report the news. We analyze it for fact and bias. We point that out. We make commentary and we debate. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. We've gotten some chats. Mike says the judge should not be pro anything. He should be weighing the evidence fairly, and especially when there's a jury involved. It seems to me that the judge is there to make sure that there is a fair presentation of evidence. Another way of looking at evidence is fact. The facts of this case should determine the actual verdict of the jury, not what the judge says. And this judge seems to be working fast and loose with his mouth and his sarcasm. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. Mike also asks, why is Lady Justice blindfolded and holding scales? So that there is a fair and impartial weighing of evidence. So what's going on in this trial? Now, civil trial is different than criminal trial. Facts are absolutely essential in a criminal trial. When it comes to a civil trial, a preponderance of evidence is what rules the day. That being said, the trial begins. We'll see what happens. There's going to be a great deal of news on this. The question is, are we actually going to hear this news reported fairly? On his radio show, that happened last Thursday, Fox News host Mark Levin attacked the judge presiding over the Dominion lawsuit, Eric Davis, as a biased and small potatoes figure who is not up to the task and should, quote, step aside, unquote. On the Thursday Mark Levin show on Westwood One, the host brought up a Mediaite article from last week about a comment from Delaware Superior Court Judge Eric Davis, who took a swipe at Fox News' Maria Bartiromo with a clear helping of sarcasm. Quote, she's clearly neutral. Well, the wisecrack didn't land. He had to spell it out when he was asked about it. She's clearly neutral. I'm being sarcastic. Clearly not neutral. Sarcasm in a courtroom is really, really hard to explain in a transcript. And even when you explain it, the bias is evident. Mark Levin has a point. After referencing the Mediaite article, Levin went after the judge for saying it. Maybe he hasn't heard about freedom of the press, which, by the way, is on trial here. Levin said the judge, who is, quote, supposed to be impartial and clearly isn't, said, Judge, why don't you step aside? He moved on to say he may not be able to handle the case. He's not ready for the big leagues. Quote, I haven't talked to any of the Fox lawyers or the Fox executives on this one. I'm just saying, as a lawyer, which Mark Levin is, you're small potatoes. This is in your courtroom. You're making a clown show of the thing. You're obviously biased and partisan in the way that you are ruling. At one point, reading from the transcript from Ken Myers, Levin asked, does the judge know how to speak? Is he even literate? Toward the end of the clip, Levin talked about voting machines and questions being raised about prior elections, and then promised that he would have more on his Sunday evening Fox News Network show, Life, Liberty, and Levin. Quote, I did all this research today for my Sunday show on Fox. You're going to want to see it. Maybe I'm telling too much right now. Let's wait, even though I know the enemy media is hanging out on every single one of my syllables. So everything was going along fine. And remember that even 30 minutes before the scheduled airtime of Life, Liberty, and Levin, he was on his Getter account saying, quote, see you soon, 8 p.m. Eastern for Life, Liberty, and Levin on Fox. If you can't watch live, make sure you DVR it. Then Fox News on Sunday said there was no new episode of Life, Liberty, and Levin. The network aired a rerun featuring Victor Davis Hanson. So the question of how this is going to be reported is certainly hanging in the balance. you might understand that there would be a chilling effect among America's journalistic effort when they find themselves in a situation where one of the most prominent journalism organizations is being taken to task in Delaware Superior Court for defamation. So you can see that people are treading very softly. The legacy media, on the other hand, they have always derided Fox. And they've always talked about how unbiased they were when the bias was clearly evident, as reported on this show for the last 25 years. It's ridiculous. So there's that problem. What's going on with Mark Levin? Why didn't his show air on Sunday? Clearly, he had one ready. Haven't heard from Mark Levin on this. We will see. Also, remember that Rupert Murdoch is a guy who is deeply involved in this defamation trial. President Donald Trump didn't necessarily make that any easier. As reported today, or actually late yesterday, former President Donald Trump, this from USA Today, called on Rupert Murdoch to back false information about the 2020 presidential election ahead of the $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit Dominion Voting Systems has pursued against Fox News. Trump on Truth Social alleged that Fox News is, quote, in big trouble if they do not expose the truth on cheating in the 2020 election, unquote. And for the second time in as many paragraphs, USA Today painfully points out there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud that would have impacted the outcome of the 2020 race for the White House. You know, I've said this several times. There are factual issues with the 2020 election that have never, ever been truly addressed. Why haven't they been addressed? Well, there's some vagaries in the U.S. election system. It is not a national election. In fact, the United States doesn't hold national elections. The presidential election in this nation is of the United States of America. There are 50 separate presidential elections. 57 if you want to be technical. And so what you end up with is you end up with everybody having their own rules. And people say, my goodness gracious, we have to have the same rules for everyone. No, we really don't. We are not the Federal Republic of America. We are the United States of America. And everybody gets to do their own separate things regarding the states. This, by the way, is where the Electoral College finds its roots. Because the Electoral College is a mechanism whereby each state has its say as to who the president of the United States will be. That way you don't have, say, for example, a pure popular vote that would be dominated by leftists on both coasts. Flyover America is, as they say cynically, Flyover America is much more conservative, much more American-based. I know, I live here. I live in Texas. And let me explain something. You can hear all kinds of things being said on mainstream media, et cetera, and as time goes by, the difference between what I believe Americans actually think and what these mainstream media outlets believe Americans actually think, that gulf is getting wider and wider and wider. We've already seen the mainstream media essentially vary whatever news coverage they needed to present to the people of the United States based on politics. The sad problem with all of that is Fox News has done the exact same thing, but from the other side of the teeter-totter. They do that as, shall we say, a counterweight. The problem with that is that bias is bias. Agenda-driven journalism is agenda-driven journalism, regardless of the agenda. The people of the United States require fact. That's why we have a free press. But this press has been hijacked. This free press has been hijacked by politics, left, right, and center, but mostly left. And all you have to do is read the paper. I know, I do it every single day. President Trump is saying that there are fraudulent aspects of the 2020 election. And USA Today does this amazing thing where every single time someone casts aspersions on the 2020 election, they say it's been debunked, they say it's false, they say it's a lie, they say, in this case, the false information about the 2020 election. They say there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Well, should there be any voter fraud at all? Journalistic efforts not interfered with by the legacy media point out that really it comes down to 44,000 votes in key states. Once again, because of the structure of the presidential election in the United States. How much voter fraud does there have to be to sway an election? No one has answered the disparity between voter turnout and number of registered voters. Does voter registration matter anymore? Amy Klobuchar was just patting her legislature on the back for saying now they've got automatic voter registration. In other words, you show up, you get to vote. Well, how do they make sure that American citizens are voting? The answer is they don't. Why is that a problem? Well, again, these are just facts. There are around 32 million illegal citizens, if you want to call them that, immigrants, what have you. They're actually aliens. They're illegal aliens living in the United States of America. If there's automatic voter registration, how do you sort the wheat from the chaff? The answer is you don't. That could be one possible explanation for why so many more people voted in the 2020 election, and perhaps elections since, than are actual registered voters. It's embarrassing. It's the absurd fact that hangs over all of this. Nobody's ever explained it. I did get into an argument with someone who said, no, they used the 2020 census figures in the 2020 election. No, they didn't. But let's say they did. Those figures indicate 201 million voters in the United States. 155 million voted, so that's a 74% turnout or thereabouts. That's never happened either. That's never happened. And these questions aren't answered. So obviously, there are problems with this election. And when we keep seeing blatant destruction in our great cities, and yet the same people or worse continue to get voted into office, it makes you think, what's going on here? One of the toughest things that I heard, speaking of counterweighting, was a situation where Republicans said, you know what, we have to go out there and we have to ballot harvest too. We have to do these things that we've been saying were absolutely wrong and should be illegal. We're going to have to go out there and do it if we want to win elections. That's not the point. The point is not whether political parties win elections. The point is whether the people's voices are being heard. That's the point. We don't live in a place like the old Soviet Union where people were voting on whether or not the government was doing its job. That's why the Communist Party never, ever lost an election until everything finally imploded. Because they weren't actually voting for representation. They were voting for whether or not the party was doing a good job. And if you voted against the party, you kind of lived in a dump as opposed to a nice apartment because they had all the housing and the food and the power and the health care. Does any of this sound familiar? There's an agenda at work. And it's an agenda I don't believe that any Americans want to have to experience firsthand. Donald Trump isn't doing Rupert Murdoch any favors. But then again, I guess you could argue that, according to Donald Trump, Rupert Murdoch didn't do him any favors either. This is what happens when you don't report the truth. This is what happens when you don't stick to the facts. Flashy firebrands like Mark Levin may make headlines. But respectfully, facts make history. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. And the most egregious thing about all of this is that when it comes to the 2020 election, we simply don't have the facts. Lots of rhetoric, but no facts. This is the Wells Report, continuing next. Thanks for joining us. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. John David Wells at your service. Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a week, 10 days ago, announced he was retiring. The first word out of my mouth when I heard about it was good. Well, he's not the only one. As it turns out, as many as 5 members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the 8 most senior uniformed leaders who advise the president on military issues, are scheduled to leave their assignments this year. Besides the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, the heads of the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, potentially the Air Force will be leaving their posts. 3 of the military's top operational commanders are changing over as well. The heads of Northern Command, Space Command, and Cyber Command. The vacancies give President Biden a chance to put his stamp on the Joint Chiefs of Staff as the administration looks to take steps to counter Chinese aggression in the Pacific. They are also looking to chart a new course in Europe after the Ukraine invasion by Russia and dump old weapon systems to make room for new ones. Quote, these are legacy moments for the Biden administration, but they are also the guardrails for the Republic, said Peter Feaver. He's a former staffer on the National Security Council and author of, quote, Armed Servants, Agency Oversight and Civil Military Relations, unquote. It's also an opportunity for President Biden, who named the first black defense secretary in 2021, to make more historic appointments, including the first female member of the Joint Chiefs. Last year, President Biden chose Admiral Linda Fagan to be the first female commandant of the Coast Guard, which operates under the Department of Homeland Security. Politico spoke to 11 current and former Defense Department officials, as well as leaders in academia with knowledge on discussions, and they made their forecasts as to who might be running for the job. Some were granted anonymity to discuss the subject ahead of the announcements. For Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the frontrunner is Air Force General C.Q. Brown. Most people say he's a shoo-in. He's the Air Force Chief of Staff. He's a fighter pilot, stellar credentials, serving as commander of the services forces in both the Middle East and the Pacific. He's also the first black man to serve as Air Force Chief of Staff. Was nominated for the job the same summer as the Black Lives Matter protests swept the nation. Marine Corps General David Berger. The White House is considering him for the Marine Corps Commandant position. He served in the post since July of 2019. Berger connected with more presidents during his interview with the job. When I'm saying that, he actually connected with President Biden during his interview. One former DOD official said Berger's interview lasted 90 minutes. Brown's interview lasted only 40, according to another former DOD official. A career infantry officer, Berger has commanded troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Pacific. He is seen as controversial in some corners of the military. His vision for reshaping the Marine Corps by shedding heavy weaponry in favor of lighter, faster forces has drawn criticism. The longer interview for Berger doesn't mean he has the job, but one person familiar with both Berger and Brown pointed out the Marine Corps leader is considered more talkative than the analytical Brown. Plus, Berger's almost total rethinking of how the Marine Corps will be positioned to fight, particularly in the Pacific, is by far the most ambitious retooling of any of the services in decades. DOD insiders are not ruling out Laura Richardson. She is a general, an Army officer serving as the commander of U.S. Southern Command. She's one of only 10 women ever to hold the rank of 4-star general or admiral. She's a helicopter pilot. Richardson previously served as commanding general of the U.S. Army North and has commanded an assault helicopter battalion in Iraq. She also served as military aide to former President Al Gore and the Army legislative liaisons to Congress. Also for the Army, the frontrunner is Army General Randy George. While Richardson is a contender, the top candidate for the Army Chief of Staff is General Randy George, who is serving in the Vice Chief staff role. George is an infantry officer who served in the 101st Airborne Division and deployed in support of the Gulf War. He also served as Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's senior military assistant from June 21st to July 22nd. For the Navy, the frontrunner is Navy Admiral Lisa Franchetti. She is currently the Vice Chief of Naval Operations. She's widely seen as a lock for the top job. The second woman to hold the Vice CNO job, Franchetti also holds a degree in journalism. A career service warfare officer, Franchetti served on the Joint Staff and commanded the destroyer USS Ross. For the Air Force, the frontrunner, General Jacqueline von Ovost. And so, if indeed the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is General Brown, that creates an opening for the top leader of the Air Force. There is a lot of buzz around General Jacqueline von Ovost, who, as the commander of U.S. Transportation Command, has been at the center of all the DoD's high-profile efforts during the Biden administration. Her forces moved vaccines during the COVID-19 response, flew evacuees from Kabul airport in 2021, and are shipping weapons to Ukraine. She is the first female head of Transportation Command, would be the first woman to head the Air Force. So, what do you think? Would a more female commanded military be a better thing? Our telephone number, A17379-2172, A17379-2172. Or does it even matter? Does it matter who actually commands the military? This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be back with hour number 2. Elon Musk, iconoclast, steps into the fray as we give you the news for this Tuesday. Back in a moment. All righty then. So that's hour number 1 in the books, and we'll do hour number 2 in just a couple of seconds. Thanks again for joining us. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We report the news, honestly and truthfully. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, but that's not news. That's just my opinion. And it's just as valuable as yours. So share it. You can do it a couple of different ways. You can call me on the telephone, 817-379-2172, or you can join us in the chat room. We have a chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're watching this on Patreon or Rumble, this show was recorded earlier in the day for consumption at your leisure. Iconoclast, a disruptor, someone who does what he wants, puts himself in a position where he is independent of the madding crowd. This perfectly describes Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a guy who has finally achieved enough success so that now he can move forward with what he believes is the right thing for the United States of America. Now, that's not always good. For example, Bill Gates succeeded beyond his wildest expectations, and some people say he succeeded well beyond his actual intellect and talent. What Bill Gates is doing is decidedly disturbing. And we'll see just exactly the fruits of each of these men as they continue in their lives. For this particular day, we are talking about billionaire tech mogul Elon Musk. He's been on Fox News. He's been speaking with Tucker Carlson. And in that exclusive interview, he mentioned some things that continue to distress most people like me who cherish civil liberties and a limited government. What he reported to Tucker Carlson was that the United States, along with foreign government agencies, was granted full access to direct messaging between private citizens on Twitter. This happened prior to his takeover. As reported by Fox News, Musk made the bombshell allegation at a sit-down interview, the first part of which aired yesterday on Tucker Carlson Tonight. They called it a rare and unfiltered discussion. Tesla and SpaceX chief spoke candidly about his concerns about artificial intelligence, his Twitter acquisition, and his future plans for the social media platform that he bought last fall. This was a jaw-dropping moment in the two-part conversation. Musk accused his predecessors at Twitter of allowing the U.S. and foreign intelligence agencies to read users' direct messages on the platform, calling it among the most absurd discoveries he made since purchasing the company for $44 billion. Musk told Carlson, quote, "The degree to which the government agencies effectively had full access to everything that was going on Twitter blew my mind. I was not aware of that." Tucker Carlson then said, well, would that include people's direct messaging? Musk immediately replied, yes, because DMs aren't encrypted. DM, direct messages. Musk said he's moving to create a feature that would give users the option to encrypt direct messages with the hopes of limiting government interference. Musk says he hopes to unveil the new edition later this month. If encryption is selected, no one at Twitter can see what you're talking about. And then he told Carlson that's exactly how it should be. And he's correct. Since taking over Twitter, Musk has made it his personal mission to expose the coordination between the tech giant and the federal government to moderate contact, particularly with his release of the Twitter files, which granted independent journalists access to Twitter's archives for a series of reports, including what led to former President Trump's suspension and the government's role in Twitter's censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. So, when we talk a little bit about this, we talk about the United States in general, it takes us all the way back to the beginning of this republic. It takes us all the way back to the most brilliant political minds of the 18th century who had seen that there was nothing new under the sun, who had seen governments tyrannize, oppress, murder their citizens, and decided they were not going to be a part of that in this new nation. And so they created a constitution to limit this government. And as time has gone by, more or less, that constitution has been followed. That changed somewhere in the 60s. There was great national unrest, an unpopular war, a news media that stepped out from the very dry, arid reportage of fact and started talking about what they thought. Holding up Edward R. Murrow as a guy who did stellar reporting for the Second World War and beyond, as an icon, someone who would be someone who could be emulated. The problem with all that is that the opinion, especially during the Vietnam War, became more important than the facts. And that started the downward slide that brings us to where we are right now, where you cannot trust the mainstream media. That you are here right this minute. Proves that you're not getting your news from any place you trust. And so here we are. Now we have a government, along with the news media, in league with big tech to do what? To throw the Bill of Rights into the ash heap of history. There is no way that back in the days of wired telephones, there is no way that you'd be in a position where the FBI could listen in on your conversations. But because you have a cell phone, and because of the vague notion that just because it goes over the airwaves, it can be intercepted for anybody's use, you don't have that protection anymore. The Fourth Amendment eroding right before your eyes. And in the case of your telephone, your ears. And then that turned into just a whole-scale surveillance society that we currently live in. You can't go anywhere without being under surveillance. Everything you write, everything you speak, everything is subject to government review. Why? Well, because of the Patriot Act, of course. Because there are people among us that are plotting the end of this nation, and we must protect it. Except, of course, the people in Washington, D.C. that are plotting the end of this nation and are trying to protect their ability to change this nation without any of our input for the sake of their political power. There are more of them than there should be. Which takes us back to what we were talking about last hour. Great hour, by the way. Don't miss it. If you missed it so far, just go back and watch it. It's available everywhere. So all of this is a, shall we say, collapsing corral that we, the people of the United States, find ourselves in. And thanks to people like Elon Musk, and there are more than one, thanks to people like Elon Musk, we actually know the miscreancy that the federal government has been taking part in. Between the weaponization of America's intelligence, law enforcement, and regulatory agencies, between the weaponization of those to suppress the political opposition, to outright surveillance of everyone, we find ourselves in a country that would not be tolerated by our forebears. They simply would not be. And so Elon Musk talks about it. What can we do about it? Well, encryption is one key, but once again, if you can put encryption into a computer, some other computer can figure out that encryption and de-encrypt it. We found that out in the Second World War. It was a machine called Colossus. It was Alan Turing. It was an amazing story. So encryption is only a temporary issue. What do we do in the long term? Well, what we do is we find a way first to make sure that our vote is actually real. That's the first thing we have to figure out. Hopefully, this defamation trial in Delaware, even though it appears to be hopelessly biased, even though it appears to be essentially an exercise in stomping on, again, a news organization that represents the political opposition. Hopefully, what will end up happening is that we will find our way into a circumstance whereby factual reporting is rewarded, that factual reporting is insisted upon, and that people that go out into this government and find the miscreancy that Elon Musk has found are not immediately castigated, investigated by the FBI, and so on. But what we have to do is we have to elect people that will say that the intellectual property of the people of the United States belongs to the people of the United States, not the government. Well, wait a minute. What if somebody's plotting the demise of a church down the street? One of the things about freedom and liberty is the church down the street needs to be ready for that. That's why we have the tools from the Bill of Rights given to us by the founding framers of this nation. Well, wait a minute. We don't want to live in an armed society. We do live in an armed society. The question is, do the citizens get to be as equally armed as the police, soldiers, criminals? So all we have to do at this point is start working on the business of America. Our stewardship of this great land may not necessarily be the best thing we've ever done. And effective immediately, it must be the best thing we've ever done. We have a wonderful example in Elon Musk. I hope we follow that example, and I hope we support this guy. And I hope we support the people telling his story. Because if we don't, we can lose all three. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Tuesday in progress, and more news around the corner as we make sure that you have the facts for today. It is the Wells Report. See you in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're talking about Elon Musk. This is a guy who is kind of quirky. He's a guy who is obviously brilliant. He has stated on Saturday Night Live, of all places, that he is in the autism spectrum. But he's a guy who understands exactly what his place in space actually is. And not just space beyond our atmosphere, but space that he inhabits along with the rest of us. Elon Musk talked with Tucker Carlson, not just about the government interfering with our communications, which is strictly forbidden by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But he also talked about something that has been occupying various moments of the Wells Report for the entire time this broadcast has been on the air. And that is artificial intelligence. I have noted over the years that I'm 2 to 3 years ahead of just about everybody else when it comes to noting things. And when I start talking about these things, like I did many years ago about artificial intelligence, people looked at me like I was some sort of tinfoil hat wearing nincompoop, and I am most assuredly not. I am someone that can see what's plainly in front of my face. And artificial intelligence threatens the human existence. Now, I've reported that based on facts, not based on delusion or conspiracy theory or paranoia. I reported it based on what I've seen. People have no idea just how long AI has been a part of our lives. Remember the Viking Mars lander? The Viking Mars lander possessed artificial intelligence. Why? Well, because it takes 38 minutes for a radio signal to travel to Mars and 38 minutes back. A landing from orbit on Mars takes about 6 to 7 minutes. So consequently, the spacecraft had to think for itself. And so NASA engineers from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena figured out a way to teach the Viking lander how to think. That was in 1976. There have been other Mars missions that did not possess artificial intelligence. Many of them in a row crashed. So artificial intelligence has been a part of our lives for a very, very long time. It stepped out into the open with your iPhone. Your iPhone is possessed with certain levels of artificial intelligence, which is why spell check is such a pain in the butt. By the way, I disabled spell check on all of my machines. And the reason I disabled spell check on all of my machines is because it was creating more trouble than it was worth. I hope that's not a harbinger for artificial intelligence in the future. Elon Musk says he's working on Truth GPT. That would be his own artificial intelligence-powered chatbot. This to take on OpenAI's ChatGPT. In an interview with Tucker Carlson, the billionaire reiterated his concerns about the dangers of artificial intelligence. And he alluded to his concerns about the existing tools being politically biased. Yeah. He's all over it. Welcome to the conversation, Elon Musk. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. More about this coming up in just a couple of seconds. Are we going to be reduced to animals in the zoo based on those entities that come next? Mostly technical. We'll find out. More in a moment. This is the Wells Report for Tuesday, the 18th day of April, year of our Lord 2023. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. We're talking about Elon Musk. A captivating interview yesterday on Tucker Carlson tonight. Elon Musk discussing that the United States government was as deep into Twitter as its board of directors, and that spying on the people of the United States was part and parcel of that arrangement. He also talked about artificial intelligence. There's another part of that interview tonight, and I don't want to miss it. Artificial intelligence is something that worries Elon Musk greatly because he believes that artificial intelligence is essentially being swayed by woke ideology. In other words, it's being trained to be untruthful, according to Elon Musk. Musk said he's going to start something which I call Truth GTP, or Maximum Truth-Seeking Artificial Intelligence, that tries to understand the nature of the universe. He believes his approach is the best path to ensuring safety. He believes that artificial intelligence that cares about understanding the universe is unlikely to annihilate humans. This is a problem. Human beings, so far as we know, are the most intelligent beings on this planet. And there are other beings on this planet that are less intelligent, like, for example, buffalo. Buffalo, the actual animal, the species, was driven to the brink of extinction because of human interaction with that species. What do you suppose? What do you suppose artificial intelligence, what kind of phasing do you believe that artificial intelligence could go through? The deepest, darkest, scariest aspect of that would be the Terminator movie series, where technology realized that human beings were the problem. And you're saying, that is so far-fetched. That is so ridiculous. No, it's not. No, it's not. Remember, there are an awful lot of people on this planet right this minute that have great sway with our political process that honestly believe that the biggest threat to this planet is us. What if that indeed becomes a center thinking post of artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence would thus do whatever it could to save the planet. And with all due respect to Mr. Musk, trying to create truth-seeking AI that seeks to understand the nature of the universe might indeed look at human beings as an infestation, as opposed to a curator or steward of this planet. Musk says his approach to artificial intelligence ensures safety. He believes that artificial intelligence that cares about understanding the universe is more unlikely to annihilate humans. That's couched in some very careful language. It's unlikely to want to annihilate humans. Okay. Would anybody but me like to have something a little more concrete? Musk discussed his role as co-founder of ChatGTP, creator OpenAI, saying he intended to build it as an open source counterweight to Google's AI effort. The billionaire lamented the current state of OpenAI, criticizing its closed source nature and claiming that Microsoft has a very strong say, if not direct control, over the company. Musk acknowledged his third option to Google and Microsoft OpenAI. The platform is starting late, but he hopes it can be done. The billionaire reiterated his concerns about OpenAI, claiming that his tools or its tools were being trained to be politically correct, which is another way of saying untruthful things. What's happening is that they are training AI to lie, not just say what the data demands it says. This according to Musk talking to Tucker Carlson. Carlson opined that AI was also withholding information, which, by the way, is the cornerstone of propaganda. It's not what you report, it's what you fail to report that turns news into propaganda. This is not the first time that Musk has talked about Truth GTP. The billionaire tweeted about it in February. It's unclear if Musk recruited anybody to start working on it or whether it will indeed be called Truth GPT. Musk has created a new company called X.AI Corporation to focus on artificial intelligence, according to the Wall Street Journal. The name of the company reflects Musk's plan to create a so-called everything app called X. Earlier this month, it was revealed that Twitter had been folded into the separate company called X Corp. Previous reports indicated that Musk is serious about building a competitor to OpenAI and Google. He's also reportedly approached AI researcher Igor Babushkin. Can you imagine? The guy that created the human interaction with artificial intelligence was named Igor Babushkin. I don't know. Maybe I see humor in odd things. Babushkin previously worked with Google's DeepMind. That was a computer that many people thought was self-aware. Musk has repeatedly commented on examples of ChatGTP conversations that he believes are either biased, politically correct, or woke. And so, AI occupies the mind of one Elon Musk. It should occupy ours as well. I'm not a big fan of apocalyptic dystopia. I'm not a big fan of trying to scare mom and pop America. But what I am a big fan of is pointing out things that concern me based on fact. Fact. Computers think faster than we do. Fact. Industrial robots move faster than we do. Machines are incredibly gifted, especially, say, for example, fighter jets that for all intents and purposes fly themselves. They take the input from the pilot and make decisions about that input, and in some cases alter it to be able to accomplish certain parameters. For example, in most fighter jet aircraft, you can kill yourself by maneuvering too abruptly. The F-16 will not let you pull more than 9 Gs. That's 9 times the force of gravity on your body. The system can be overridden, famously by Israeli pilots who crossed that boundary several times. We don't know whether they can still balance their checkbook or whether they lived out of their 40s, but we can tell you that there are machines out there that will alter the commands of human beings based on their programming. Well, what about artificial intelligence? Are we going to have to reason with artificial intelligence? Are we truly going to have to debate with artificial intelligence what we human beings believe versus what it, or shall we say they, the various forms of artificial intelligence, as if there would be more than one? I don't believe there will be. Anyway, that being said, I don't believe there will be separate entities. I believe there'll only be one technical, artificial, intelligent being, as if there wasn't one now. Anyway, are we going to have to reason with these people? Well, that's what artificially intelligent chat bots are all about. You're already involved in conversations with non-human people. And so what do we do? The only thing that I can say is this. I've always been respectful of others. Whether they be carbon-based life forms or silicon chip-based life forms, I've always been considerate. My friends laugh at me for being polite with Siri. Well, I am. I don't really know why. I mean, the mistakes that Siri makes with me are amazing. For some reason, Siri has a problem with my voice. I will say something and she'll completely miss it. I'll say, Siri, please call blah, blah, blah. And I'll get a completely different name. I don't know how that works. But I am polite to Siri and I don't curse at her. And I don't cast aspersions on her. You know, like I listened as somebody question the morality of Siri. And I listened to Siri say something along the lines of that's inappropriate or something like that. And I'm going, really? By the way, Kelly says, what pronoun are we going to be forced to use for AI? What I might suggest is you. Or just AI. So what I keep thinking about is how we're going to interact with this. Elon Musk brought up something very scary in the conversation about AI with Tucker Carlson. And I sort of alluded to it between the human beings and buffalo. He said, well, we still have chimpanzees. Human beings didn't think that chimpanzees were a danger to them and therefore had to be put away. And I stopped and thought for a moment, and I said, could it possibly be that at some point artificial intelligence believes that we are simply animals in the park? And the answer, of course, is yes. At some point, especially given the impetus of Elon Musk attempting to create artificial intelligence that understands the nature of the universe, at some point, we are not going to be able to interact with artificial intelligence at all. Just like it's really hard to have a conversation with a squirrel. You know, I will have conversations with my dog, but I'm pretty sure that Odin does not know what I'm saying. And I will also be equally sure that I don't know what he's saying either. We still interact. Is that the way we'll interact with artificial intelligence? How will human beings protect themselves? How will human beings protect themselves from artificial intelligence? If it thinks faster than we do, if it is, and there's no reason to believe that artificial intelligence hasn't been sitting back and considering all kinds of things as we go through our lives. Because just as I can sit here and say the government of the United States listens to everything we say on our self-inflicted spy devices, I can also say that artificial intelligence hears everything we say as well. Siri understands some conversation, but is there an artificial intelligent being out there that understands all of them? How many conversations can that person listen to, that being listen to at a time? Probably all of them. And so at some point, and I'm not thinking that it's going to happen in, say, for example, my lifetime, but certainly in the lifetime of my children, Are they going to be told what to do by artificial intelligence? What if they say no? I just think about this, and I truly concern myself with the possibility that we may be looking at the twilight of human dominance on this planet. Have you thought about that? Or is it something that doesn't concern you? Human beings are very adept at adaptation. And what I think about is that somehow we will find a way to adapt. I certainly hope so. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. And the reason it's tax day is because April 15th, which is normally tax day, well, that was on a Saturday this year. And of course, yesterday was a federal holiday of some kind. Again, I'm not especially sure what holiday it was. Maybe I'm just dumb. Anyway, April 18th is the deadline for you to file your tax. As of April 7th, the Internal Revenue Service processed more than 101 million returns. The average refund to taxpayers is $2,878. That's down from $3,175. At the same time a year earlier, the lower refunds are partially attributed to the elimination of key credits available to taxpayers last tax season. Taxes are due by April 18th, since April 15th falls on a Saturday and Emancipation Day. There we go. Now we know. A holiday observed in Washington, D.C. That happened yesterday. Taxpayers who don't file by the deadline face hefty penalties. According to the IRS, the failure to file penalty is 5% of unpaid taxes for each month you don't pay, but not to exceed 25%. And that doesn't count any additional state penalties. If you fail to pay taxes on time, the penalty is 0.05% of unpaid taxes for each month you don't pay, with a 25% cap. Previous years, the U.S. Postal Service would keep post offices open longer on tax day for taxpayers who want to drop off their returns before the midnight deadline. This year, if you're submitting a paper return, don't expect post offices to maintain later hours. Yeah. Welcome to the electronic age. You know, I got to say something about this while we're talking about taxes and so on and so on. You know, I got to be honest. Paper annoys me. It really does. It annoys me. And the reason it annoys me is because it piles up around the house. It's a pain in the butt to deal with. It has information you don't want anybody else to have, et cetera, et cetera. And then I realized, okay, the problem with not using paper is you're trying to do all your business on this. And that's not necessarily something you can do because it's so small. I mean, it's like you can't get everything. I mean, you know, there's not an app for everything, strangely. And you have it's kind of hard to mess around with, which takes me back to Steve Jobs coming out with the first tablet, which I thought was ridiculous. I thought that the tablet, when it came out, was basically a Russian version of a cell phone. Gigantic. And then I realized, no, not so much. And computers are a little bit too big. So it seems to me that the perfect invention was the iPad. So I may end up getting one. But I don't like paper. I do like electronic transfers. The problem with it is, once again, since we don't have the law yet on the books that demands that all intellectual property belongs to the individual, we really don't know what happens when we toss our taxes off into the ether to be handled by the IRS on the other side of that particular algorithm. And we know, because we've actually experienced it, that other nations grab our personal data and probably know a lot more about us than we want them to. Anyway, that being said, the phone rang. Let me see if this is anybody that I can talk to. Nope. Well, hold on. Hi, this is the Wells Report. How can I help you? Hello? Hello? Wow. You're telling me everything that's on my mind right now. All right, so I got a phone call poured in, and no one was there. Getting back to what we're talking about here, tax day. So if you're going to do the paper route, you're probably not going to have an open post office. So just do it electronically, I guess. I mean, do you do that? The IRS considers returns on time if they're postmarked on or before April 15th. If your return is dropped off in a blue collection box or post office after the collection time, it will get postmarked the next day. Uh-oh. For extra security, taxpayers can also get a certificate of mailing in case their return is lost or delayed to verify they mailed their return on time. But in order to get one of those, you got to stand in one of those famous post office lines. Yeah. If you live in parts of California affected by severe winter storms, flooding, other natural disasters, you have until October 16th to file your individual and business taxes. And the age-old quandary of couples facing every year, the benefits and drawbacks of filing jointly or separately. A simple coin toss to decide which route to take could end up being more costly or cause you to miss out on hefty tax credits and deductions. Look, if you're married, just go ahead and file jointly. Okay? Seriously, if you're living with somebody, if you're longtime partners, what have you, file separately. Right? But if you're married, be married. If you're single, be single. That's really great advice. This has been the Wells Report. Thanks very much for paying attention. Thanks very much for joining us. I'll be back tomorrow between 9 and 11 Central Time for another broadcast of the Wells Report. Well, okay. And just like that, we've come to the end of the broadcast. Okay, so the good news is this is where the show is going to be, 9 to 11. Okay, maybe 9 to noon on some days. All right. The bad news is that I have to leave on Wednesday. So Thursday and Friday, there won't be a Wells Report, but Monday, Tuesday, and then beginning on Monday, this is going to be the way it is. So by all means, mark your calendars. Hopefully the days of the show showing up at various times during the day are over. So 9 to 11, Monday through Friday, sometimes 9 to noon, Monday through Friday from now on. Okay, except for this particular week, I've got State Guard business. Peace, love, joy. Have a great day, and I will see you again